AFC and the APNU on the issue of the formation of a pre-election pro-democracy alliance. One bone of contention seems to be who should lead the alliance. The AFC seems determined to have its way in having the #1 spot in the presidential race, even though it is by far the junior partner in terms of membership and influence. The leader or nothing position advanced by the AFC is reminiscent of the stand adopted by the founder leader of the PNC, Mr. Forbes Burnham, during the 1950s, when, in a grab for the leadership of the PPP, and again during the 1960s, when he refused to become part of a national unity government, but chose instead to team up with Western vested interests and local reactionary elements to remove the PPP from government. The PNC is in a serious dilemma on how to treat with the demand made by the AFC. Indeed, it certainly would have a lot of explaining to do as regards its sellout position to its membership and why it allowed itself to be manipulated by the AFC into selling out its interests to the junior partner. This would be seen not only as spineless on the part of Granger and the leadership of the PNC, but also as a sellout to the AFC, which has a mere 7 seats in Parliament as opposed to the PNC's 26. The AFC would also not escape the wrath of its membership and supporters for reneging on an earlier commitment that it will never enter into an electoral alliance with the PNC. This about-face can only be seen as a betrayal to its members and another grand sellout on the altar of political expediency. Already there are rumblings from the rank and file in both camps regarding the secretive manner in which the talks are proceeding. In our post-colonial history, only 3 political parties had the opportunity to govern. These were the People's Progressive Party, the People's National Congress, and the United Force. The latter as a junior coalition partner following the elections of 1964. That coalition lasted for a mere 3 years until the UF was unceremoniously booted out from the coalition government, but not before the PNC had taken full control of the state machinery, which included the Elections Commission. Guyana does not have a good history when it comes to coalition politics. As mentioned earlier, the first coalition government involving the PNC and the United Force ended up in an abysmal failure, even though the coalition succeeded in the removal of the PPP government in 1964, in what former British Prime Minister dubbed a fiddled constitutional arrangement. Early attempts to form a coalition government between the PPP and the PNC during the early 1960s failed after Mr. Burnham refused to agree on parity terms in cabinet offered by the PPP and opted instead to align himself with foreign vested interests and local reactionary elements to destabilize the PPP government. After the PNC rigged itself to power in successive national and regional elections, there were attempts to form a broad-based National Front government with an agreed program initiated by the PPP. This attempt once again failed after the PNC dismissed the PPP as a minority party, even though the whole of Guyana knew differently. Their obsession with power by the PNC knew and knows no bounds. Apart from the blatant disregard for the fundamental rights of the Guyanese people to elect a government of their choice, the regime embarked on a reign of terror in which several Guyanese were harassed, victimized, jailed, and in some cases murdered, as was the case of Dr. Walter Rodney, which commission inquiry is now painfully revealing. Indeed, some of the very players who once held key and strategic positions during that repressive period are once again in the political spotlight. Interestingly, the PNC-APNU under the leadership of former military strongman David Granger is currently in secret talks with the Alliance for Change aimed at a pre-election alliance. It is interesting to see how these talks will play out. Will the APNU play second fiddle to the AFC, apart from being the new kid on the block, lacking in seniority and mass appeal? If past political experience is anything to go by, any coalition with the PNC would be the kiss of death and doomed to failure. Primarily because it is built on hate for the PPP. The PPP is the only political party that has demonstrated internal political stability with a strong civic component that has endured over the years. The PPP formula has remained unchanged since the restoration of democracy on October 5th, 1992. The PNC, by contrast, has experimented with several combinations and permutations, changing from PNC to PNCR, then to PNCR 1G, and eventually morphing into the APNU. It would take more than the magical powers of Houdini to convince the Guyanese electorate that an AFC-APNU coalition would fare any better this time around, especially in an environment characterized by the lack of trust and hegemonistic tendencies on the part of the PNC. The PBPC is poised once again to be returned to power, this time with a comfortable majority of votes, as the opposition parties are still struggling to find a way out of the conundrum they have now found themselves in. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party has noted with deep concern a recent statement emanating from GCOM as regards public vetting of polling day staff. GCOM, in a statement, misrepresented the PPP statement and accused our party of publicly declaring that GCOM has agreed to this condition. The PPP wishes to state that at a meeting held with officials of GCOM, public vetting of polling day staff by political parties was discussed, and it was agreed that GCOM will consider this request. The PPP wishes to emphasize that the party statement was misunderstood and taken completely out of context by GCOM. The following is an extract from the party statement on the meeting held. Quote, the PPP delegation called for a public vetting process and committed to provide GCOM with justifications in respect of persons not suitable for employment by GCOM. The party delegation advised that for GCOM to gain public trust and allow for further vetting, GCOM must make public the names of all persons to be employed earliest. Added to this, the party requested GCOM to inform all political parties about training schedules and to make accessible to political parties whatever training manuals are available. The PPP recommended that presiding officers found guilty of intentional and biased acts in previous elections ought to be blacklisted from playing any role in future elections. GCOM CEO reported that these matters are currently engaging the attention of the Commission. The party is of the view that fair and balanced reporting of press releases and statements read to journalists will prevail during this period in the run-up to the elections. Thank you.
Thanks. There you have two statements. For questions.
It has a history. Let me go for Ghana hasn't had a good history with coalitions. But when last I checked, the present administration is a coalition and it's been in place for 22 years. So how do you justify your comment?
Well, what I meant coalition by two political parties, two independent political parties.
Political.
Yes, what we have here is an alliance of the PPP with civic individuals forming the PPPC. The civic does not constitute a political party by itself. It's a combination of individuals who have their heart at doing good for Guyana.
And some members of the civic have been absorbed by the PPP. Is it true that they were forced to become members, like Sam Hines?
The first part of the question may very well be so, but the second part, I wouldn't answer to that one because it's a total fabrication. I don't know where you got that from.
Yes.
Gordon Mosley, news source. Mr. Rohi, sir, you, in highlighting the first part of your statement, you spoke about the AFC joining up with the APNU, what it would mean for the AFC. Would the PPP be willing to form a pre-election coalition with the AFC?
No, that has never been a consideration for the party.
Why not?
Because we have never entertained such a thought.
Would you entertain it if they come to you?
If they come to us, I thought I heard Mr. Nagamutu saying that we must go to them.
But if there was a meeting of the minds, would the party consider a pre-election coalition with the Alliance for Change?
That matter is a matter that the leadership will have to discuss. But at this point in time, as the GS of the party, we haven't actually discussed anything of that time.
Sir, and we're just about, I think it's just around 100 days or so away from the May 11th elections. The party will be stepping into campaign mode. In fact, you said they've already started some bottom house meetings and will be expanding more into many of the communities. There is talk that the PPP intends to seek the assistance of former President Mr. Jagdeo. Could you indicate or confirm that Mr. Jagdeo will be one of your
Seek the assistance in what area?
campaigning?
Oh.
So could you confirm, sir, that Mr. Jagdeo will form part of your candidates list and will be one of the candidates for your party heading into these elections?
Mr. Jagdeo is an executive and central committee member of the party. He's a member of the party in good standing, a former president, and he has made useful contributions. So I don't think it would surprise anyone for him to be part of the campaign and for him to be on our list. But the list of our party has not been settled as yet. But as I said, I don't think anyone would be surprised, to see all the leaders of the party in the campaign and on the list.
Would the party be open, sir, to make him part of an A-team? A couple of years ago, I think it was back in 1997, the party unveiled an A-team in Mrs. Jagan, Mr. Hines, and Mr. Jagdeo. Could you say the party intends to do something similar this time around to bring Mr. Jagdeo back in
Yeah, Mr. Jagdi has never been out.
No, in
So I
terms
don't
of
know
the
what
top
the-
candidates list, based on the last elections, as one of the top candidates, an A-team of sorts for 2015.
Those are all matters that the party has to discuss, you know. All those issues are being discussed at the leadership level. You know, nothing's agreed until everything is agreed. The only one thing that I know that has been agreed to is that Mr. Rambatar is the only presidential candidate. There's no other presidential candidate.
Would that decision have been taken?
I just made an announcement. If it slipped past you, well, I can't repeat it.
And the prime ministerial candidate, sir? Is that up in the air still between Mr. Jagdeo and Mrs. Rodriguez-Burkett?
I don't know that the names are associated with it. I know that the party is still discussing it.
What about you, sir? Since you have now missed the presidential candidate spot again, will you be putting your hat in the ring for a possible running mate spot?
Everything is possible. You know, let's wait and see what will come out of the
Give me
wash.
something, Odi Bag.
Let's see what will come
All
out
right,
of the wash.
yes.
You said in your opening statement that the PPP is poised to victory. Aren't you afraid that should
But
they?
you know, the PPP, you know, we believe in a PPPC alliance. If the PPP has the presidential candidate, okay, traditionally the civic component has had the prime ministerial candidate.
Who are the top civic members? Who really, outside of Mr. Hines, we've not heard of top civic members, really.
Well, you may not have heard any, but there are a lot of people who are working. There are a lot of people who are working. Do you know who is likely to be the presidential candidate of the APNU FC Alliance? What are the
Which
names?
you?
What? Ah?
The APN used to Mr. Granger.
Oh. Well, that's true because I've seen on the Facebook page Granger for president while the talks are going on. So,
Yes.
Yes, sir. In your opening statement, you said that the PPP is poised to victory. Aren't you afraid that should the APNU and the AFC collate would result in a new government?
Or less. Or less.
you know, that word that you mentioned beginning with A is not in my vocabulary.
Which one is it?
You mentioned the word afraid. That word is not in our vocabulary.
Well, I don't literally mean afraid as in.
Well, I'm
frightened,
saying
I
to
mean-
you, previously we heard people asking us if we're afraid to go to the polls and all these things. You know, there's a fighting party. There's a fighting party. We came out of struggle. We are in struggle. And we will continue to struggle.
So many remarks just so that I'm not confused. I'm just going back to your announcement about the presidential candidate. That is not likely to change because I also heard you say that the list is not finalized. So just to make sure that I get it crystal clear.
The list and the nominee to be the presidential candidate, the two don't go hand in hand. Not necessarily.
Okay. So Mr. Ramtar is presidential candidate, full stop. That will not change before May 11th.
I doubt it.
Sir, and in your opening statement, the PNC was really a big bad tiger, killing people and all of this. How do you justify?
Well, you see what's coming out in the Rodney trial?
Don't jump too fast. They got a surprise.
Oh, okay.
How do you
The Rodney Commission required rewinding now. I don't know how many
No,
more
somebody's
surprises.
going to be there.
I don't know how many surprises.
Who will turn it on and say the man who was with Rodney. We can talk about that. Anyhow, the question has to do with the PPP, your party, soliciting arms out of Czechoslovakia on one occasion, being accused of sending people for guerrilla training in Cuba.
Record so you can publish that.
No, you know about it and I know about it and ask me to comment.
Well, I think those matters have been fully ventilated over the years.
But these people know about it.
Well, I can't help them if they don't read the history books. One comrade told me at this table that he doesn't have to be born around that time. He goes back to the history books and he reads and he's fully acquainted with what is going on. And he's here at the table.
Well,
Alright.
Mr.
But what
Rowley,
I'm saying is that, that concoction was part of the so-called burial plot that was concocted by external powers, was in keeping with part of the creation of the communist boogie to create the impression that Guyana was going to be a second Cuba, and that Cuba was exporting revolution, in those days. So I believe that those matters have now been put to rest over the years, and that people are no longer paying much attention to those things. People are thinking about the future going forward.
General was one of the men who went to Cuba. General knows he was discussing with PPP. And he's doing a lot of talking. Is he lying?
I don't know what is he talking about. I don't know. I don't pay attention to him.
Cuba, I was being trained as a guerrilla in Cuba.
General Harman.
General Rahman.
If I were you, I wouldn't pay much attention to him on those matters. I won't pay much attention to him. He personally has been involved. That's what he's been saying.
That's what he said.
I doubt it. I wouldn't pay much attention to him. Just calculate his age and you would probably understand what I mean.
Mr. Rowley, sir, could you say when the decision was made to finalize President Ramatar as the presidential candidate again for the PPP
Last week.
last week?
Mhm.
And could you say what was some of the things taken into consideration? Were the other candidates?
What was that?
What were some of the other things taken into consideration? Were there other candidates, other hopefuls?
No. There were no other presidential hopefuls.
And sir, you would know that Mr. Ramatar, leading into the last elections,
Mhm.
would have led the PPP into its first minority status
Mhm.
since taking over the government in 1992. So how do you justify putting him again as your presidential candidate when he would have been the one to lose you quite a number of votes?
Well, that's an assumption. We are not going to the elections with that kind of assumption. We're going to the elections to win the elections, and we made out after the elections in 2011 what were some of the factors that were responsible for us losing control of the parliament. We've also pointed out over those years that we have taken corrective measures to address those issues. Now, I believe, as the GS, that we are in a much better position. We've corrected, and we're still working to do more than corrected. Apart from rectification, we're doing quite a considerable amount of work to ensure that we are way ahead of the game.
Sir, if we look at the actual numbers from 1992, the party has been consistently losing votes in terms of the numbers, while the PNC went down and then came back up, and the AFC, they've been gaining ground since they took part in 2 elections. What do you think is to blame for the PPP from 92, 97, 2001, 2006, 2011, keeps losing, the votes keeps falling apart? What do you think is responsible for that?
Migration.
I read an article recently by one Gerhard Ramsarup, who made a prognosis that if the AFC was to go to elections again, they're not going to stand the ghost of a chance. So the political fortunes for every single party is up for grabs. That's what elections is all about. So I wouldn't want to predict that everything is hunky-dory for the AFC and the APNU. Don't they have serious problems too? Look at Linden. They have serious problems in other parts of the country too. You may not be aware of it, but we are. And the AFC has problems too. There's no political party outside of the PPP that can say that all things are bright and beautiful for them.
That's what I'm not asking to predict on that. I'm asking you, is to give a reason, or in your estimation, what do you believe is responsible for the party consistently losing votes from 92, the last elections of 2011. The figures are there to prove that the PPP is the only party that has been consistently losing votes.
I'm not so sure about that. Let's wait and see what will happen in these elections that are coming
Well,
up.
up to 2011 then, why do you think it is that the party would have been losing votes every year up to 2011, every election year up to 2011?
But we put out that analysis already. We put out that analysis soon after the 2011 elections. That analysis was made. We had several consultations, the last one, big one being at the Princess Hotel and so forth. So, I won't want to reinvent those things at this point in time. Now is not the time to talk about those things. Now is the time to talk about going forward.
Sir, do you think a Jack Dio candidacy on any PPP list at 18 or whatever it might be is a plus or minus for the party realistically?
I think it's a plus. I think it's a plus. He's an asset to the PPP. So we're not going to let go of him because of the attacks that have been launched against him over the years by the Kaicho News, the iNews, the Demar Waves, and all those media houses. We're not going to let go of him. He's an asset to us. He's one of us.
Sir, I want to ask you about the concern of your party for whatever is happening between AFC and APNU. You say you're worried about APNU losing its face. You're worried about the new kid on the block dictating to them.
I'm not worried. Did I use those words? Did I
No, you
worry?
didn't use the words, but the fact that one, you dedicated an entire statement to whatever is going on between them suggests a measure of interest, a measure of concern.
Well, that's normal in politics. In the world of politics, it's normal for the political parties to comment on each other's wherewithal, well-being, and that's nothing unusual in terms of political analysis or to the horizon, so to speak, of the politics in the country. So
But no other party is even looking at
maybe
what
they're not able to make the analysis.
between
They're so
political-
caught up in their internal wranglings and tanglings and so forth.
But they ain't got time to look at it.
They ain't got time to, they're looking at me, yes, but they ain't got time to deal with the, analytical issues.
Any other?
Mr. Rohini, yes, I just wanted to follow up really on this candidacy going forward to the elections. Like mostly mentioned, Mr. Ramter really led the PPP to its first minority government since 1992. It had a star president in Mr. Jagdeo, but that didn't give you the majority. Are you looking to bring out somebody to kind of drum up that support to give you back the majority? Are you looking at the star candidate to come up?
You gotta look at the totality. I told you earlier that we are working on a package, a total presentation to the electorate. So far we've agreed on one person to be the presidential candidate.
Are you
Okay.
looking at a woman to be prime ministerial candidate?
We're looking at everything. We're looking at everything.
Is that likely?
Is what?
Is that likely that you will field a woman for the prime ministerial candidate?
Really, truly speaking, I don't have a crystal ball to look into, to tell you,
But who are you talking about? You said you're discussing these matters.
No, man, I can't disclose that at this point in time.
All right, let's move on. Any other question on the statement?
Mr. Roy, do you support the Ministry of Education's decision to move the exams date to June 15 and 16 for the city elections?
The Ministry of Education has made such a decision
Yes, they have, sir.
When?
They announced it this morning at 11 o'clock at press conference.
to move what?
To move the exams, CXC and CAPE to June 15 and 16 in order to facilitate May 11th election day.
Well, to be honest, I know him, but that's for the first time. And as I said at the previous conference, you ought to give me the opportunity to read what was said by the minister or by the ministry, and to, then we will comment on it officially. But I haven't heard it said. That's why I'm asking if they said that.
But you're a part of the government.
But I heard Granger. No, but
Cabinet mission.
Granger, I heard Granger said that somebody issued a threat at Starbuck Market Square, saying that Mr. Ramatam better change the date or else by Tuesday, by tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow is the deadline for the election date to be changed. So,
I've been interrupted. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning.
Mr. Roby, AFC has been picketing the American Embassy and a lot of small farm picketing exercises to have members of
I didn't get that last part. It sort of
other
went, it
picketing
went garbled.
exercises to have members of the PVP visas revoked. Can you say what sort of impact this would have on the party if the picket exercises are successful?
I don't think it's whether the picketing exercise is successful or not. I think it's what the Americans would do.
Well, if it's successful, that means they got results.
Not necessarily. A picketing exercise will be successful in the sense that it made headlines, it attracted public opinion. In different ways, it could be successful.
Okay, suppose your visas are revoked,
That's a decision for the U.S. Embassy to make.
and how would it impact the party?
I don't think it would impact us in any way. We have our work to do here naturally, we're a natural party. So
So it would have no sort of impact on the PVP.
leave that to the Americans to decide.
And sir, AFC's Moses Nakamutu had noted
If
that
what?
the AFC's Moses Nakamutu has noted that the quote-unquote chattery threats are enough to unseat the government. How would you go about addressing this in your campaign, addressing the whole Nanlal incident in your campaign?
You mentioned a name there that I don't usually comment on, so I wouldn't comment further on that.
Okay, the official statement of AFC was that this incident involving Manuel and the senior Kaiser News reporter is enough to unseat the government.
No,
So-
I don't think you could substitute a statement by an individual for an official statement by the party.
He said it was a party press conference, so it's official.
No, well, even if he said it at the party press conference, he said
Okay,
it.
setting
I
aside
would.
Mr. Nagamutu's
I think we should move
How
away
would
from that.
PVP move towards addressing this incident in his campaign to put their supporters' minds at ease?
Well, when we come to that bridge, we'll cross it.
So there's no strategy already.
When we come to that bridge, we'll cross it. The PPP has never been, deficient in strategies. That's why we're able to stay in government for all these time. That's a lot. Why people are fighting to come in? We are in, so we got to fight to stay in, which means we have strategies.
Final question, Mr. Roy. On Neil Mark's question of the candidacy and on my question about the preparedness to address this issue, you keep saying when you get to that bridge, you'll cross it, and when you reach that point. But elections are very close. Is PPP somehow ill-prepared?
Not at all. Drop the ill from the prepared and you know what where we are.
Okay.
Any other last question?
Mr. Rohit, with Ghanaian Science. PVP has expressed in the past that they have issues with GCOM. The fact that the president has called elections, does this mean that the issues
The fact that what?
The fact that the president has called elections, does this mean that the issues they have has been solved already?
No, I think that President must have consulted with the chairman of GCOM in terms of the date that he had in mind. And I think I understand Mr. Surbal is saying that they're ready once the president announced the elections to go to the polls. So there are a few little things that have to be sorted out, like the claims and objections period, and so forth. So I think those things could easily be sorted out once the political parties and specifically the PPP is given a hearing by GCOM in terms of his representation. But I would not go so far as to say that GCOM is unprepared.
Okay, but the issues have been resolved.
I am hopeful that the issues will be resolved.
Also, can you tell me when the PPP will officially launch their campaign?
No, I can't tell you that. I haven't really read their result.
Thank you.